I was standing in the checkout line at HomeGoods, my cart overflowing with things I absolutely did not need. A heavy, mustard yellow knit blanket, 2 oversized ceramic mugs that looked like they belonged in a rustic cabin, and one of those woven baskets that just ends up collecting junk mail. It was a mundane Tuesday night. The store had that distinct, artificial scent of spiced vanilla candles mixed with the quiet, lingering boredom of suburbanites looking for a quick serotonin boost after a long workday. I was just debating whether to put back a heavy faux marble serving tray when my phone vibrated sharply against my palm. It was my sister, Chloe. She had just texted me a message so brief, so incredibly blunt, that it felt like all the oxygen had been instantly sucked out of the aisle. 7 words. 7 words that would permanently fracture the foundation of my entire life. You are out of the wedding. This is only for real family. No crying emojis to soften the blow. No lengthy paragraph of context or passive-aggressive explanation. Just a cold, digital guillotine. At first, my brain simply refused to process the pixels on the screen. I stared at the glowing glass, convinced it was some bizarre, out-of-context joke or just another one of Chloe's dramatic, fleeting tantrums. She was known for her theatrical outbursts, sure, but to be completely uninvited from the biggest day of her life? It made zero logical sense. I hadn't even done anything wrong. At least, not anything I was aware of. We hadn't fought. We hadn't exchanged harsh words. In fact, our last conversation, just a few weeks prior, was her complaining about her bridal party's dress sizes while I listened patiently on speakerphone. But as I stood there, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead, the brutal reality started to sink into my bones. I hadn't just been sidelined or demoted to a regular guest. My very existence, my worth in her inner circle, had been completely canceled with a single, heartless tap of a screen. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I just left my cart right there next to a display of ceramic pumpkins, walked out through the automatic sliding doors into the crisp evening air, and realized my lifelong role as the dependable, invisible safety net was officially over. I barely remember the physical act of walking to my car. The parking lot was bathed in the harsh, amber glow of sodium streetlights, casting long, distorted shadows across the wet asphalt. Once inside the quiet sanctuary of my sedan, the engine still off and the evening chill seeping through the windows, I finally found the courage to open the massive family group chat. This was the digital hub shared by our cousins, our mother, a few aunts, and Chloe's meticulously selected bridesmaids. I scrolled up to see the barrage of messages that had preceded my sudden exile. Ashley, the maid of honor who always treated life like a reality television show, had sent a string of crying emojis, but not the sympathetic kind. It was the mocking, laughing so hard I'm crying face. Then Chloe chimed in, her digital voice dripping with an arrogance I hadn't quite recognized before. "Let's just keep the toxic drama out of my special day," she wrote. "Sarah is just not really part of the bridal vision anymore." A younger cousin, clearly confused by the sudden hostility, timidly replied, "Wait, didn't she just pay for your final dress fitting on Saturday?" Chloe's response was immediate, firing back before the typing bubble even had a chance to bounce. "Oh yeah, but that's officially scrapped too. She can take her pathetic little charity fund back." More laughing icons flooded the screen, thumbs-up reactions, heart emojis on Chloe's cruelest messages. I sat there, watching the screen scroll, waiting for anyone to interject. I waited for my mother to tell them to stop. I waited for an aunt to call out the absurdity. No one said a single word in my defense. Not one. I stared at my phone screen so intensely I felt like I could shatter the glass with my mind. The sheer audacity of it all was paralyzing. I wasn't just a guest. I had spent my entire adult life playing the role of the dependable, responsible sister. I was the one who showed up in the middle of a rainstorm when her car broke down. I covered her tuition gaps when she was failing classes, co-signed the lease for her cramped first apartment that always smelled like stale ramen, and quietly handled the financial wreckage when she completely blew through her credit limit 3 years ago. I never asked for a single dime in return. I just wanted her to be okay. For this specific celebration, I had already drained my savings to pay for more than half of the extravagant catering deposit. I had also locked down the top-tier DJ she desperately wanted, and funded the endless floral arrangements because she sat on my couch sobbing about being entirely out of cash. She had looked me right in the eyes exactly 8 weeks ago and told me I was the only person on earth she trusted to handle the most important details of her life. And now, inexplicably, my blood wasn't thick enough to earn me a seat at the table. I didn't type a furious paragraph. I didn't call her screaming. I simply tossed my phone onto the passenger seat, started the ignition, and drove home in a profound, heavy silence. It was the kind of pressurized quiet you feel deep in your eardrums right before a massive thunderstorm breaks. I didn't peel out of the parking lot, and I didn't blast the radio to drown out my thoughts. The streetlights blurred into long streaks of orange and white against the dark glass of my windshield, but my mind was operating with terrifying, crystal-clear precision. I walked into my apartment, dropped my keys on the kitchen counter, and sat down on my beige sectional, the exact same couch Chloe used to roll her eyes at for being too safe and boring. I opened my banking app. I scrolled back through months of meticulously tracked transactions. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about undeniable proof. Proof of every single time I had been the silent fixer, the ultimate safety net for her reckless choices. I took perfectly cropped screenshots of my bank statements. Then, I opened my laptop and dug into my email to pull the specific invoices. I made sure to capture the headers clearly, the ones displaying my name on the Bill To line and her name under the Event For section. I navigated back to the group chat. It was still buzzing with activity. A few cousins were sending animated gifs of people sipping tea, thoroughly enjoying the spectacle of my supposed downfall. They probably pictured me sobbing onto my kitchen counter, completely humiliated and defeated. They had absolutely no idea that I was currently functioning with the cold, calculated precision of a forensic accountant. I typed my reply. Great. Then real family can cover their own bills. I didn't wait for a single typing bubble to appear. I started attaching the files, letting them load one by one so the notifications would ding repeatedly on their phones, a slow, methodical drumbeat of reality. Catering deposit, $8,400. DJ service, paid in full. Photography deposit, $2,500. Florist arrangements, paid in full. Every image showed the paid stamp in stark green ink right next to the last 4 digits of my credit card. And then, I did the part that felt like pulling the pin from a grenade. I called the vendors. It was late, so I left firm, clear voicemails for the photographer and the music guy, but the food vendor had an online portal. I logged in, located the cancel event button, and stared at the warning about non-refundable fees. I didn't care if I lost every penny. I clicked yes. For the florist, I sent a direct email to Mrs. Gable, a sweet older woman I'd had coffee with 3 times just to finalize Chloe's obsession with white hydrangeas. Please cancel the order immediately, I wrote. The financing for this event has been withdrawn. I canceled every single one of them. They were about to learn the hard way what happens when the ATM finally unplugs itself. One by one, the group chat lit up, but not with panic yet. At first, it was more mockery. Chloe sent a text that simply read, "Okay, bitter much?" Ashley posted a meme about bridezillas versus brokezillas, which didn't even make any logical sense since I was the one holding the purse strings. They were still laughing at me, convinced I was bluffing, thinking I was just throwing a tantrum for attention. But by the time the sun came up, the entire atmosphere had violently shifted. The hearts and the LOL reactions were completely gone. They weren't laughing anymore. They were waking up to the harsh reality that when the ATM walks away, the party abruptly stops. When I woke up the next morning, my phone had 74 unread messages. I didn't even check them right away. I padded into my kitchen, the hardwood floorboards cool under my bare feet, and methodically made a fresh pot of dark roast coffee. I opened the window above the sink and let the crisp autumn air drift in, smelling faintly of wet leaves and distant rain. I was calm, coldly, deeply calm. It was the kind of unnatural stillness that settles over your bones after someone flips a switch inside your chest that can never, ever be unflipped. When I finally sat down at my island with my mug and opened the chat, the tone had flipped completely overnight. The mockery was gone, replaced by a frantic, jagged panic. "Sarah, you're kidding, right? You seriously canceled the vendors? That's low, even for you." Then Mom jumped in, her texts arriving in a rapid-fire stream of emotional manipulation and guilt. "You need to fix this immediately. This is your sister's big day." She was stressed. "She didn't mean it. You don't destroy a family event out of pure spite. I read that one twice. Out of spite. I hadn't said anything cruel to Chloe. I didn't insult her appearance or throw a fit. I just turned off the money tap, the one I never should have opened in the first place. Then Chloe sent the message that actually landed a blow. You were always jealous I was getting married first. You never wanted this to happen for me. That one punched me in the chest a little. Not because it was true, it wasn't, but because she genuinely believed her own narrative. I started to realize she didn't just see me as the backup plan anymore. She saw me as the primary villain in her little fantasy world. I didn't respond. A few hours later, I got a frantic call from the florist, Mrs. Gable. She sounded deeply rattled. She said Chloe had called her screaming, demanding the arrangements be reinstated immediately, claiming I had absolutely no right to cancel. But the contract was crystal clear. The payment had been in my name. I told Mrs. Gable I wouldn't be covering another cent and politely wished her luck dealing with the bride. Then I got a call from Dad. My father never calls ever. He's the type of stoic man who communicates entirely through affirmative grunts, brief nods, and forwarding email chains. So when his name flashed across my phone screen, I foolishly thought maybe, finally, someone was going to look at the situation objectively for what it actually was. Nope. He didn't ask how I was doing. He simply asked if I'd really sabotaged Chloe's wedding. He asked if I was still holding a petty grudge over that stupid argument about her car loan from 3 years ago. I told him this wasn't about any ancient fight. It was about being explicitly told I wasn't real family while I was actively footing the massive bill for the entire party. He let out a long, heavy sigh, a sound of profound disappointment that echoed through the receiver. You're being petty, Sarah. You're embarrassing us in front of everyone. I didn't say a single word. I just hung up. They were all so deeply concerned about the optics, about the public embarrassment. They probably pictured me sitting at home, sobbing into my pillow, or throwing things around my living room in a jealous rage. But I wasn't. I was meticulously planning. That night, I opened the group chat one last time. Just one sentence to let them know I wasn't entirely finished yet. Wait for your wedding gift. No one responded. Not a single typing bubble appeared. They were probably all huddled together in my parents' living room, whispering about my sudden insanity, calling me selfish, bitter, and crazy. But I wasn't sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I was securing something far more permanent. See, Chloe had conveniently forgotten something crucial. She forgot that I used to share an apartment with her, that I knew all her passwords by heart, that I had helped her clean up disastrous messes she begged me not to tell Mom and Dad about. And more importantly, she completely forgot about New Year's Eve. The night I accidentally walked into her bedroom looking for a phone charger and saw her tangled up with someone who definitely wasn't her fiancé, Mark. His name was Travis, her toxic ex-boyfriend from college, the one she swore she completely despised. And I had a video. I hadn't meant to take it. I'd been fumbling to switch on my flashlight in the dark, narrow hallway and accidentally hit record instead. The footage was shaky, shot hastily through the crack in the door, but the audio was terrifyingly crystal clear. I had tucked it away at the time, convincing myself it wasn't my business to destroy her relationship. But now? Now it was very much my business. I didn't say anything for the rest of that week. I let them all stew in their own anxiety. Chloe posted some vague, passive-aggressive Instagram captions about cutting off toxic energy and protecting her inner peace. A few of our older relatives eagerly reposted them, adding praying hands emojis to show their unwavering support. The event was still happening. She had frantically scraped together cheap replacements, probably a Spotify playlist instead of a DJ, but the show was still on, and I was going to be there. The ceremony was rigidly scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at a rented vineyard, 2 agonizing hours outside the city limits. I technically wasn't invited anymore, but I knew my family wouldn't have hired security to check names at the wrought iron gate. It was meant to be a casual, family-run affair. Chloe probably figured I wouldn't dare show my face after all the horrific drama I supposedly caused. That was exactly where she miscalculated. I showed up wearing a simple, navy blue dress. Nothing flashy, just enough to blend seamlessly into the background like an uninvited ghost. I even brought a card, tucked neatly into a small white envelope, and slipped it effortlessly into the overflowing gift box near the guest book. Inside the card, I wrote exactly 6 words. Hope you enjoy the memories forever. I stayed firmly in the back during the entire ceremony. I didn't make eye contact or talk to anyone. Most of the family was seated eagerly near the front, our parents, our uncles and aunts, our grandparents. Chloe stood radiantly under a white archway wrapped tightly in faux vines, her smile wide and practiced, her dress painfully expensive. She looked exactly like someone who couldn't afford a single table centerpiece just 3 short days ago. Her fiancé, Mark, looked genuinely happy. Nervous, perhaps, but undeniably happy. I watched him closely from my shadowy spot. The guy had always been nice enough, polite at family barbecues, a bit boring in a way that made him seem incredibly trustworthy and safe. I had absolutely no reason to dislike him. In fact, standing there, I actually felt a deep pang of pity for him. He had no idea who he was about to commit his entire life to. When the officiant finally started the concluding part of the ceremony, the vows, I slowly pulled out my phone. I had already queued up the video. It was exactly 22 seconds long, shot shakily through a narrow crack in the bedroom door. Chloe's voice was clear as day, her hands tangled in Travis's hair, laughing softly as she whispered, "He's just a safety net. I don't love him like I love you." I took a deep breath. I hit send. The video went out simultaneously to the entire family group chat. Every single cousin, aunt, uncle, and yes, Mark himself. I saw the exact precise moment he felt the sharp vibration in his suit pocket. So did Chloe. Her flawless smile twitched, just a tiny flicker, like a cheap light bulb about to permanently burn out. He pulled out his phone mid-vow. So did my mother, my Aunt Susan, and my cousin Ashley. One by one, people started murmuring, exchanging confused glances, their phones lighting up like tiny fireflies in the dim, golden afternoon light. Then Mark held up his hand, stopping the officiant mid-sentence. He turned to Chloe and said something very quietly, something no one else in the crowd could possibly hear, and held up the glowing screen right to her face. She went completely pale. She tried desperately to grab the phone from him, but Mark pulled it back sharply. Then he looked past her, his eyes scanning straight into the stunned crowd until his gaze finally locked onto me, standing quietly in the shadows at the very back of the vineyard. That's when I stepped forward, walking slowly down the middle aisle, right up to the altar. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just said one simple, devastating thing, my voice carrying clearly over the stunned silence of the entire family. You all really needed to know who my sister actually is. No one moved an inch. No one dared to interrupt. Chloe didn't speak. She just stared at me, completely stunned, her mouth hanging open like she couldn't decide what fake emotion to display first. Then, all hell broke loose. Chloe lunged at me, practically knocking over the poor officiant. She screamed something I couldn't even make out, probably empty threats, maybe vicious slurs. But before she could even reach me, Mark stepped directly between us and grabbed her arm tightly. She turned on him next. Big mistake, because Mark didn't let go. He didn't yell. He just stood there, stone-faced, holding her by the wrist like she was a complete stranger who had just tried to pickpocket his wallet. He asked her 2 devastating words. "Is it true?" Chloe started crying. Not cute, delicate crying. Desperate, ugly, red-faced, gasping sobs. She kept saying, "I'm so sorry," and that it didn't mean anything, and that it was just a one-time mistake. But Mark wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring at the video again. Then he simply walked away. Not just off the altar, off the entire vineyard property, straight into his car, and drove off into the afternoon. Chloe collapsed dramatically onto the grass, still sobbing hysterically. Our mom ran to her immediately. Some bridesmaids followed suit. Not a single person came near me. I turned around, walked calmly back to my car, and didn't look back once. On the long drive home, I turned off my phone completely. I didn't need to see the immediate fallout. I already knew exactly what was happening. When I finally turned my phone back on late that night, I expected a massive firestorm. What I got instead was a quiet, insidious kind of chaos, the kind that feels infinitely heavier than screaming. I got 74 missed calls that night. Most of them were frantic dials from my mom, a few from unknown numbers, probably distant relatives trying desperately to act like they suddenly held a neutral opinion. One single voicemail from Chloe. I didn't listen to it. I just deleted it immediately. The group chat was an absolute war zone. Messages were flying in from every conceivable direction. A few of them still had the video open on their screens, commenting underneath it like it was some scandalous Facebook post. Uncle Tom wrote, "This is a damn disgrace to our name." Cousin Ashley added, "I knew something was totally off about her. She even tried to flirt with Travis at my engagement party last year." Aunt Susan chimed in, "This is a deeply private matter. Sarah, that was absolutely not your place to air. Everyone stop right now. This isn't helping anyone." And finally, my dad. "We will not tolerate this kind of public humiliation in this family. Not her cheating, not her constant lying, not what she explicitly said about Mark being just a safety net. No." The ultimate problem was that I had revealed the ugly truth, and in doing so, I had made them all look bad in front of their friends. By morning, the chat was eerily quiet again. Then the text messages had started coming in one by one in private. "You've made your point. Enough is enough. Chloe, I genuinely hope you're happy. You've completely destroyed my entire life. You don't even know the whole complicated story. Cousin Sarah, you okay?" That last one made me pause for a long time. It was the absolute first message that didn't come heavily loaded with immediate judgment or accusation. I stared at the glowing letters for a while. But I didn't respond. I didn't want any sympathy. I just wanted endless space. That afternoon, Dad called again. I let it ring out to voicemail. He left exactly one sentence. "Your mother is absolutely inconsolable right now. Call her." I didn't. Instead, I drove over to the place Mark used to work, a small, dusty garage on the far east side of town. I wasn't entirely sure why I went. Maybe just to make sure he was somewhat okay, or maybe to offer a sincere apology for making it so public. He wasn't there. His coworker casually mentioned he'd taken the entire week off. I left my number on a scrap of paper and told them to give it to him if he ever felt like talking. Then I drove straight home, pulled the heavy blackout blinds shut, and slept for 14 solid hours. By the weekend, Chloe had completely wiped her entire Instagram presence. No aesthetic posts, no curated stories, just her empty bio and a blurry profile picture that looked like it was from over 3 years ago. The engagement photos, the ones she'd proudly posted months in advance with the ridiculous hashtag she invented, were all completely gone. The hashtag itself had been brutally hijacked by the internet. People had started posting hilarious memes under it. Some even reshared the leaked video, edited with overly dramatic soap opera music. She was being relentlessly humiliated publicly now, and suddenly, magically, I wasn't the sole villain anymore. But that fleeting relief didn't last, because within mere days, the family circled the wagons tightly. Mom texted me again. "We raised you so much better than this. She's your sister. You were supposed to fiercely protect her, not destroy her life." And then came the final, crushing blow. "We're not entirely sure we want you at Thanksgiving dinner this year. Things are just way too raw." I stared at that specific message the absolute longest. After everything Chloe had selfishly done, the constant lies, the deep betrayal, the sickening entitlement, the way she blatantly used me like a personal ATM, and then casually tossed me aside like garbage, I was the one being aggressively pushed out, not her, me. So, I typed back exactly one sentence. "Don't worry about it, I absolutely won't be there." I permanently left the family group chat, immediately blocked Chloe's number, deleted all the saved voicemails, and then I sat there quietly on my couch, completely alone. I wasn't feeling overly dramatic, and I wasn't even feeling angry anymore, just profoundly quiet. It hit me then, for the very first time in all of this chaotic mess, I didn't actually have a sister anymore. The long week immediately after the disastrous event was eerily, suffocatingly silent. No angry calls, no passive-aggressive text messages, not even a snarky comment on my social media feeds, which was incredibly strange considering how loud my family usually was whenever they were even slightly upset. They weren't staying quiet because they had absolutely nothing to say. They were staying quiet because I had suddenly become the dirty, embarrassing problem they desperately didn't want to talk about in public. I was the dark stain they simply couldn't wash out without drawing significantly more attention to themselves. Chloe didn't try to reach out again. I thought maybe she'd post a lengthy public statement, something vague about being deeply betrayed or entirely misunderstood by the world, but she didn't do it. She completely disappeared, vanished entirely from all our mutual friends' pages. It was exactly like she went completely underground. Thanksgiving came and went without a sound. I spent it eating spicy Thai takeout on my comfortable couch, quietly watching a long documentary about deep-sea shipwrecks. It felt incredibly fitting, I guess. I slowly started realizing exactly how much of my entire identity had been deeply tied to constantly fixing broken things for Chloe, for my demanding parents, for literally everyone else. Without that exhausting role, I didn't really know who I actually was. One lazy afternoon, I went digging through my hallway storage closet and accidentally found a dusty shoebox full of old, fading photos. Ones from when Chloe and I were just innocent kids, wearing matching flannel pajamas, smiling at messy birthday parties, a sunny beach trip where we happily made sandcastles and fiercely fought over who got the very last Capri Sundae. I sat right there on the cold floor, just staring at our stupid, sunburned little faces, and seriously wondered if any of that had ever been genuinely real. Had she ever actually seen me as her loving sister, or was I always just a convenient safety net to her too? I didn't throw the old photos away. I just carefully put the box back on the shelf. Some things simply aren't worth burning to the ground, even when they hurt you deeply. But that's exactly when it really, truly settled deep into my bones. This wasn't just the bitter end of a massive fight. This was the absolute end of a lifelong relationship, one I'd been silently carrying entirely alone for years without even realizing it. And she never once looked at me and said thank you. December came incredibly fast. Freezing cold mornings, thick frost clinging to the apartment windows, colorful holiday lights strung up brightly on neighboring houses like absolutely nothing had happened, like the world had just effortlessly moved on without missing a single beat. I hadn't heard a single word from anyone in my entire family since that text before Thanksgiving. Not even a mass-forwarded holiday chain email from Aunt Susan, who religiously used to send those 25 days of gratitude things like absolute clockwork. Nothing. It was exactly like I'd been quietly, efficiently cut right out of the family photo. No big dramatic speech, no final confrontation, just completely erased. I thought maybe Christmas morning would finally break the heavy silence, that someone would eventually crack, that someone would text me something completely dumb and neutral. Are you coming over to Mom's? Or, really hope you're doing okay. But the only single message I got on Christmas morning was from a random old coworker. I didn't even reply to it. Instead, I drove to a little roadside diner that was miraculously still open, sat quietly by the frosty window, and slowly ate a stack of pancakes entirely by myself while a young, tired couple in the corner gently fed bites to their fussy toddler. I didn't feel sorry for myself. I didn't even feel sad. It was just incredibly quiet. And then, sometime around early New Year's, I got a long email from Chloe. Not a direct message, not a tearful call, an actual, typed-out email. The subject line simply read, "For what it's worth." No warm greeting, no sincere apology, just a massive wall of defensive text. She said she absolutely never meant for things to go this far. That I had always intentionally made her feel like she owed me something massive. That I never truly understood how incredibly hard it was to grow up constantly living in my perfect shadow, even if I genuinely thought I was just helping her. That I completely blew up her entire life out of pure, unadulterated spite. She said Mark was never actually perfect, that Travis was just a stupid mistake, that I completely ruined her entire future. She didn't say she was sorry. She said I made her feel like she was an absolute nobody. I stared blankly at that specific sentence for a very long time. You made me feel like I was a nobody. Funny, I thought to myself. That's exactly what she explicitly said to me right before she callously kicked me out of the wedding. I didn't bother to reply. I archived the long message and permanently blocked her email address. That was the absolute last time she ever tried to reach out to me. Then, about a week later, I got a random call from Mark. It was an unknown number. I only picked up because I was actively expecting a work call, but the second I heard his familiar voice, I completely froze. He politely asked if I had a little time to talk. I told him I didn't owe him anything at all, but he quickly said that wasn't why he was calling me. He said, "Thank you." He said he sat there and watched the leaked video 10 times that very night, and not because he didn't believe it was real. He absolutely did. But because he simply couldn't understand how he'd completely missed the signs. The subtle way she'd been distant, constantly distracted, overly affectionate right before they had big arguments. It all made perfect sense to him now. She wasn't genuinely unsure about him. She just desperately wanted to be seen by everyone as the good one, the innocent victim. He told me he immediately left town, permanently canceled their expensive apartment lease, took some extended time off work, and went to stay quietly with a close friend out in Colorado. He said he didn't even tell his own parents what had actually happened yet. "I honestly don't know who I was about to marry," he said softly. "But I'm incredibly glad I didn't." He asked if I was doing okay. That was the absolute first time someone had really, truly asked me that and actually meant it. I honestly told him I didn't know yet. I wasn't sad, exactly. I wasn't furiously angry anymore either. Just incredibly empty, like someone had surgically cut out a massive part of my life and just filled the gaping hole with cold air. He said something right then that I absolutely won't ever forget. Sometimes you lose people who were never really yours to begin with. I finally started going to therapy in late January. Not because I felt irreparably broken, but because I desperately didn't want to become completely numb to the world. I needed to carefully sort out the long years I spent constantly trying to be her net, her sturdy crutch, her ultimate fixer. I had to learn the hard way that fiercely protecting people who absolutely don't want your protection doesn't make you noble or heroic. It just makes you incredibly, deeply tired. One quiet night, my therapist asked me a simple question that stuck deep in my ribs like a painful bruise. "What specific part of you are you still waiting for them to acknowledge?" I didn't answer her right away. I just looked at the round clock on the white wall, listening to the steady ticking, quietly measuring the heavy silence in the room. After a long while, I finally said that I was enough without constantly having to be useful. That was it. That was the deep, festering wound I hadn't been able to properly name for years. I don't really know where Chloe is right now. I heard a rumor from a distant cousin months later that she quickly moved in with Travis, that they predictably broke up after just 2 months, shocker, and that she's currently living on a friend's couch and working some random job she absolutely won't talk about. I don't actively wish her pain. I don't wish her anything, really. I just simply don't consider her my sister anymore. And honestly, finding that out wasn't about seeking revenge. That was just finally finding my own peace. When you spend your entire life being the sturdy beam holding up a crumbling house, you forget that you're allowed to step outside and just stand in the sunlight. You forget that loyalty shouldn't come with a suffocating price tag, and that love isn't something you have to constantly earn by fixing everyone else's chaotic messes. It took a shattered ceremony, a viral video, and a season of absolute deafening silence for me to finally understand that walking away wasn't an act of cruelty. It was the ultimate act of self-preservation. I'm sharing this story not because I want you to feel sorry for me, but because I know exactly how many of you out there are quietly carrying the unbearable weight of people who only love you for what you can provide. You are not a bank account. You are not a human shield for someone else's toxic decisions, and you absolutely do not have to set yourself on fire just to keep your relatives warm. If you've ever found yourself standing in the ashes of a relationship you tried desperately to save, or if you've ever had to draw a boundary so thick it felt like building a fortress, I want to hear from you. Drop your experiences down in the comments below. Let's remind each other that choosing your own mental health over a toxic dynamic isn't selfish, it's necessary survival. Thank you so much for tuning in and walking through this wild journey with me today. If this story resonated with you, or if you just appreciate a good dose of reality where actions actually have consequences, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the next deep dive. Until next time, keep your boundaries strong, keep your receipts safe, and remember, sometimes the quietest exits make the loudest impact. Welcome to Karma's Coils. Stay safe out there.